Welcome everyone, physically and virtually as well, to an evening we hope to be rich with fiction, poetry, and visions. We are a little out of practice when it comes to physical events and hybrid events. We have many online today on YouTube, so please bear with us. My name is Bilal Orfali. I'm the Sheikh Zayed Chair for Arabic and Islamic Studies at the American University of Beirut and a visiting professor for Arab and Middle Eastern Studies at New York University, Abu Dhabi. I was a member of the Arab-German Young Academy, AGYA, for 5 years. Now, I am an alumnus of the Academy, and I think for 3 or 4 years. So I've been associated with AGYA for 9 years. Since 2013. And I find it difficult to introduce an organization that has played a vital role in my development as a scholar, a citizen of the world, and a person as well. The story of AGYA is an integral part of my own story. For each AGYA member weaves their own story within a larger frame story. The frame story is one of commitment. Commitment for cooperation, collaboration, research, understanding, and shaping a better world. Unfortunately, I am no storyteller, but as an Arabic saying has it, هذه أعمالنا تدل علينا. Our deeds point at us. Just look at the several books that AGYA has produced in the last few years. In 2000, what is AGYA? In 2013, the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities, with the generous support of the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, the BMBF, has ventured to do something never done before, to start the first bilateral young academy in the world. And I don't think we're the only ones now. There are other bilateral young academies, but we were the first one. In 2013, AGYA was born. AGYA is a network of excellence. The Academy aims to establish a community of outstanding researchers who are at an early stage in their academic career. The potential members of the AGYA are distinguished young researchers from Germany and the Arab countries. By Arab countries, I mean all the Arab countries. Let me name them: Algeria, Bahrain, Comoros, Djibouti, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Libya, Mauritania, Morocco, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Tunisia, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. This impressive list of countries demonstrates that, and they're members, of course, from almost all of these countries, maybe not Comoros yet or Djibouti, but we're working on that. So this impressive list of countries demonstrates that AGYA promotes South-South cooperation in as much as it encourages North-South cooperation. And this is very important because, for example, I come from Lebanon. And in the past 9 years, I have been in direct cooperation with scholars from most Arab countries, and I visited most Arab countries within the framework of AGYA, something that could not have been achieved without this generous support of AGYA. The goal of AGYA is the effective strengthening of the international cooperation between excellent Arab and German early career researchers. AGYA supports innovative collaborative projects and cooperative initiatives from different areas of scientific research, science policy, and education. The concept of AGYA is to foster the practical application of interdisciplinarity. So all our projects are interdisciplinary projects. I come from the field of Arabic studies, for example, but over the tenure of the last 9 years, I have been in direct dialogue with architects, musicians, educators, medical doctors, social scientists, and scholars in exact and quantitative sciences. And I've not only direct contact, I've done projects with these people and publications as well. AGYA also fosters the intercultural experience of its members and promotes them as ambassadors of science and culture. So one of the AGYA projects is this literary salon. So I've been involved in the establishment of this salon within the framework of AGYA with my colleague, AGYA alumnus and tandem partner, Kirill Dimitrov. The Salon is inspired by a number of AGYA alumni literary conversations that I had the last, I think, 2 years or last year even probably, with 3 renowned authors, Jokh al-Harthi from Oman, Huda Barakat, and Rashid al-Daif from Lebanon. So then we thought to move this to a different level, to a higher level, and we established this AGYA Literary Salon. Today is our kick-off event. So what is the idea of the AGYA Literary Salon? In the spirit of bilateral interactions between the Arab world and Germany, the AGYA Literary Salon will host Arab and German authors, AGYA, Arab-German Young Academy, but occasionally also authors from the Global South, to discuss their literary career, visions, and latest books. The Salon will use literature as a launchpad for deeper discussions. The literature is thus a roadmap to the bigger questions that the Salon will raise. Literature opens up windows to social realities, past, present, and future. It's an attempt to introduce Arabic and Global South literature to the world and to read it, not just because it is different, but also because it offers ways of understanding, expressions of human values, and as a source for inspiration as well. The diversity of voices in world literature encourages us to shift perspectives and overcome stereotypes. The Salon will host established writers to read from their works, share their visions, and pitch new ideas. So in addition to distinguished writers, we will also host emerging writers to encourage new writing and allow these writers to find an audience as well. So far, we have scheduled 3 other events for this year. We're working on the 4th one as well. I will name the 3 that we've scheduled so far. One is a Salon with Mohsen al-Ramli, Iraqi author, titled Iraq, Dreams and Expression. Another Salon with Daniela Dantz, Society, Motifs and Language from Germany. And a Salon with Maha Hassan, a Syrian author living in Paris. It's titled War, Writing and Freedom. So stay tuned. Now I come to this Salon, this wonderful event. The first Salon is a conversation with Iraqi-born writer Fadhil Azzawi. It explores how literature in the Arab world has been shaped by disillusionment with the failure of left-wing politics, and what art can offer beyond the limits of political ideology. And it is my utmost pleasure to introduce the towering figure in Arabic literature, Fadhil Azzawi. It's really a great honor to have him here. Fadel is a poet, novelist, and literary critic. Born in Kirkuk in 1940, he belongs to a generation of Iraqi intellectuals who came of age with the promise of left-wing politics and whose literary and artistic work sought to respond to their disillusionment with that promise. He has written a lot about this himself. During the 1960s, he worked as a literary editor and critic at several Iraqi newspapers, where he theorized and experimented with new forms of poetry. In 1977, Azzawi moved to Leipzig, where he completed a dissertation in journalism at Karl Marx Universität that explored the cultural significance of newspapers in relation to state ideologies. After completing his dissertation in 1983, he moved to Berlin, where he has lived since. He is the author of 7 novels, wonderful novels. Each of them is very different from the others, so I invite you to look at them. He's been translated, of course, to many languages, including German and English. I learned today that he actually translated his first novel, مخلوقات Fadhil Azzawi, to English himself. And I have a copy, so I look forward to reading it on the plane. So he's the author of 7 novels, poetry collections, and 3 critical memoirs, including the indispensable cultural history, al-Ruh, al-hayya, al-Siteenaat, في العراق. Please join me again in welcoming our distinguished guest writer Fadhil Azzawi.
I will read a poem first in Arabic and then in English or in German. It is about writing poetry. كيف تكتب قصيدة سحرية؟ ليس أسهل من أن تكتب قصيدة سحرية إذا ما امتلكت أعصابا قوية أو نية صافية على الأقل. الأمر ليس صعبا بالتأكيد. خذ حبلا واربطه بغيمة حيث طرف منه يتدلى مثل طفل. تسلق الحبل حتى النهاية ثم ارمه إلينا ودعنا نبحث عنك عبثا في كل قصيدة. And now the German translation. The translation is by Wie schreibt man ein magisches Gedicht? Nichts ist leichter, als ein magisches Gedicht zu schreiben, wenn du starke Nerven oder wenigstens gute Absichten hättest. Es ist nicht schwer, ich versichere es dir. Nimm ein Seil, verbinde es mit einer Wolke und lass es hinabbaumeln. Klettere am Seil hinauf wie ein Kind bis zum Ende. Werfe es dir hinunter und lasse uns nach dir suchen, hoffnungslos in jedem Gedicht. Ich lese auch, I read also a poem in the German language. In Gefangenschaft. This poem is inspired by a folk song, a Bedouin folk song sung by a famous singer by us, Samira Tawfiq, I think. It is of Arabic, so يا عين موليتين يا عين مولية جسر الحديد انقطع من دوس رجلي صعدت فوق السطح لقيت لمتهم لقيت عبدة وعبد بحبال مربوطة. The poem is about two persons, about a girl, a slave, and a slave. I have tried to write a poem about them. In Gefangenschaft. In Gefangenschaft. Einem alten Volkslied entsprungen, landeten auf dem Dach unseres Hauses in Bagdad eine Sklaven und ein Sklave. Sie waren Rücken an Rücken gefesselt. Sie trugen weiße, zerlumpte Kleider und weinten. Ich glaube, sie hätten auf ein Piratenschiff gewartet. Ich glaube, sie hätten den Blick auf einen Horizont aus Bäumen gerichtet. Ich glaube, sie hätten an eine ferne Insel gedacht. als ich zu ihnen hinausging und ihre Fesseln löste, flammten sie plötzlich zwischen meinen Händen auf und zerfielten zu Asche. I read now a poem in English. Listen, Noah. Listen, Noah. With our feeble arms, we have built Noah and higher embankments against the coming floods. Whenever a ship sank, the carpenters built another. Memories of the future alone kept our hope alive. Through the centuries, we heard wailing of the drowned everywhere. Our miracle, we always survived.
Thank you. This was absolutely beautiful. We're lucky to have also two specialists on literature and poetry, Dr. Friederike Pannevic and Dr. Saleem al-Bahloly. I will introduce them in due time. And we will start with Professor Dr. Friederike Pannevic, who is a well-known figure, of course, in the field of Arabic studies, of modern Arabic literature in particular. She studied Oriental Studies at the University of Bamberg, Arabic and Turkish Studies at the Sorbonne and the National Institute of Oriental Languages in Paris, and the Drama Academy in Damascus as well. She completed her master's in Arabic and Turkish Studies and PhD in Arabic and Theater Studies at the Freie Universität Berlin. She then worked as a lecturer at the Free University of Berlin, leading a number of important projects, including cultural mobility in Middle Eastern literatures. Between 2005 and 2007, she was associate professor for Arabic studies at the University of Oslo, Department for Cultural Studies and Oriental Languages, and in September 2007, appointed a university professor at the Philipps University, Marburg, in the Center for Near and Middle Eastern Studies, CNMS, in the Department of Arabic Literature and Culture. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Friederike Pannevic.
Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation to come here. Thank you for having me here. I'm honored and pleasured to be with you here in this thrilling first evening of the literary salon at AGYA, and to be with you here and to have the chance to meet you and to talk to you. Thank you so much. And I've been asked to say a few words on Arabic literature now in Germany in the beginning. And I would like to start with a short anecdote from my time as a student, my personal experience. When I was in my second semester, it's long ago, it was in the 1980s, I wanted to know if there was any good Arabic novels in German translation. So I went to a bookshop and asked there whether there is anything I could read, an Arabic novel or so. And the lady, the saleswoman, she hesitated quite a long while, and she thought about it, and then she sent me to the corner of tourism novels and tourism works. And when I didn't find there what I wanted to, what I was looking for, she gave me another tip, and she said, "Look, we have another table over there where we have something collected on global terrorism." So, okay, Arabic literature between tourism and terrorism, that's what I get to know, at least in the 1980s. to find an author like Naguib Mahfouz or Mahmoud Darwish in a bookshop in a section just of world literature, just in alphabetically order, this was inconceivable at the time. And even after the receiving of the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1988, it was rather unlikely that Mahfouz's work would be classified simply as literature in mainstream bookstores. I think that Egypt tourism label lasted pretty long. But it's not just about the proverbial Wanderlust and longing for distant lands of the Germans here. I would say the reception of Arabic literature and the translation market have always been closely linked to political events. It's 9/11, the Gulf Wars, global terrorism, the Arab Spring, and the often bloody conflict that began afterwards in countries like, for instance, Syria. And there is a highly interesting recent study by literary translator, researcher, writer, and project curator Sandra Hetzel, which was commissioned in the framework of Layla Research Project, supported by the Anna Lindh Foundation and coordinated by Literature Across Frontiers in partnership with Arab Lit and IREMO. So, and the title of this study is Translation of Arabic Literature in German-Speaking Countries, 2010 to 2020. And this interesting study examines the situation of Arabic literature in Germany some 30 years after my first experiences in the 1980s as a student. And what is new in these last 3 decades is the rapid growth of an Arab cultural diaspora in Europe, and especially here in Germany. And this study tries to find out why, and here I quote from it, why despite the long-standing historic and geopolitical importance of Arabic and the region where it is spoken, its geographic proximity and its massive numbers of speakers, Arabic literature and translation continues to play a marginal role in the German-speaking literary market. This is the end of quote. And I would say one of the findings of this study, which are really interesting, is that the largest peak by far for translation from Arabic to German was not after the Arab Spring, it was in 2010. And following Hetzel's analysis, it appears to have been a late outcome of the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2004. Where the Arab world was a guest of honor, I would say also an expression of an increased interest in the region. And she realized the following, whereas at the beginning, most publishers had a regional focus. But by 2020, publishers with no specific focus on Arabic literature or Middle Eastern literature played the largest role. And this means that Arabic literature is somewhat leaving the obscure and segregated niche of specialized publications, where titles often went unnoticed, and moving into the mainstream book market, where it enjoys greater overall visibility, and specifically greater visibility among non-specialist readers. But I would say the most significant development of the decade regarding Arabic literature in the German-speaking countries is the recent emergence of Berlin as a thriving center of Arabic cultural production. We all know that in the past few years, countless Arab writers, artists, scholars, and cultural workers have made Berlin their base, many of them from Syria, so that even already speak from a kind of Syrian boom here. And this leads me to the first question to you, Dr. Al-Azzawi, because you moved in 1977 from Iraq, first to Leipzig and then to Berlin, where you are also currently based. And I would love to hear a little bit about your personal experience here in the German literary field during these last 3 decades, so since 1977? And would you agree with Hetzel's findings in her study on Arabic literature in Germany, this kind of move that had taken place?
Well, as I came to Germany, there were not too much Arabs living here in Germany, and the immigration was not so great as we see now. The number of Arabs was limited. But there were some Arabs and some people. At the end of 70s, many Iraqis left Iraq for political reasons. There was a terror, there was they are as writers, as journalists, it was very difficult for them to write what they like, what they think about. So they were obliged to leave the country. I left Iraq, for example, not because I wanted to be in Europe or in Germany, but I found myself, it was impossible for me to do my job as a writer, as a poet, and stay under the regime. The regime, it was, they were obliged, many intellectuals, to enter the party, or they have no chance to work. Even the professors, doctors in the universities, they were obliged to be in the party. When they refused that, they paid a very high price for that. The price was prison, or they found no chance but to leave the country. Well, as I came to Germany, there were not too much writers. There were 2 or 3 persons. I met them in Leipzig or in Berlin. But I have to say most of the Arab intellectuals and the Iraqi intellectuals, they went basically to England or to France. In France, you meet, when you sit in a cafe, you meet many writers, poets. It is something ordinary to meet these people. But in Germany, it is not so. And I think it is still till now. There are some writers and some poets, but they are not too much. When I go to London, for example, I meet many writers, poets, novelists, intellectuals, critics. But here in Germany, the possibility is very limited, and most of them prefer to go to London or Paris. And I have to say, in Germany, there is no Arab press. In a city like London, you find many newspapers, magazines, literary magazines, for example, الشرق الأوسط, al-hayya, and al-Qudus, al-Arab, all of them are working in England. And the Arab writers or journalists, they have the possibility to write and publish in these newspapers and magazines. But in Germany, there is no newspaper or magazine.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing these experiences with us. Would you say that, because you said here are not so many of my colleagues, so to say, to meet in German cafes, other than in London or Paris, would you say this for Iraqi friends and writer colleagues or Arab? And so is there a difference between the different Arab communities from different Arab countries like Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt? Would you say that there is a kind of difference in the communities, or could we speak here from a kind of Arabic diaspora or exilic community which is Arab, or it is an Iraqi community, a Syrian community, Palestinian?
There are communities, but the Arabs, they are Arabs. They speak the same language, and especially for the writers, we have the Arab writers. I think that's a very important thing. It is the only thing, the only hope which united the Arabs now. We as Arab writers, we find no difference between us. An Iraqi writer is a friend of Lebanese writer or Yemeni writer or Syrian. Or, so the field, the cultural field or the literary atmosphere united us. Also in the Arab countries, they consider themselves friends, and they have no differences.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is highly interesting. And do you have any context, or what is your opinion on this? The newcomers, so to see, in the literary field here in Germany, many of them came from Syria and younger. As I didn't do any research on this, but what I heard is that the older or middle generation from Syria rather went to Paris, and the younger generation and many theater artists came here to Berlin from Syria. Are there any contacts between your maybe Iraqi community and these rather younger fellows from Syria now?
No, as I know, in the Arab countries, we have our known writers, and so they publish books, and they take part in the activities, and so they are known. But many people, as I know, they come to Europe, and they have tried to write something or publish an article or so, and they consider themselves to be writers. I know people from Iraq. They have no name at all in the Arab countries, but here they say they are poets, and so, and maybe they will. It will be not difficult for them to find a publisher to publish a book for them, but they are in reality no real writers.
Okay, this remembers me of what Yassin al-Hajj Saleh, the Syrian dissident, once said in an interview. He said that the Syrians now publishing and getting getting more known in the German community are mostly lower quality testimonial literature written by the young people from Syria. This is not high quality literature, as he said. So it is also a question of generation in here, and also the different audiences maybe. To write for a German audience and to be getting known here might need other laws of the market also than to publish in the Arab world, because you always, as far as I can see, you publish with Riyad Reyes in London or Arab publishers. So this is maybe another also rules of market in here, as to publish here with German publication houses. So it has also other rules of quality or goals.
No, it is not the matter of it is not the matter of if they are really writers or not. The problem is, I have to put it so. The problem, they are not writers at all. Not all of them, of course. There are some people among them. They have talents to write, but many of them, they are ordinary people.
So a writer is not ordinary people. What is a writer about?
No, ordinary people, I mean, they have only certain level of culture and ability to writer is something else, I think. Writer means he has to know the language, to write in a right language. Many of these people, they are unable to write in a standard Arabic, or but some of the translators, they took these texts, they are written in not so good Arabic, yeah, but they put it in a good German. Yes, yes, of course.
Gained in translation.
Yes, it is so. And some of also known writers, Arab writers, I know that their books are written in not so good high style or language, and they make mistakes in Arabic. They are not acceptable by the Arabs. The Arabs know these people. Yes, but in the translation, the translator makes their book better.
Okay, and how about, for instance, Iraqi writers like Abbas Khidr, who are writing directly in German? Is this still part of Arabic literature, in your opinion?
Yes, I know Abbas Khidr. He's a young writer from Iraq. He has tried to publish something in Arabic, but not. It is difficult to get his place, or to get to find people say or write about him, and so. But in Germany, he tried. Yes, he tried to publish. I think 3 novels or something like this, Der falsche Ende, or something like this, he has published. And I think he get also support. It is difficult for an Iraqi, for an Arab to write direct a novel. It is not so easy.
So would you say that these novels he published directly in English, in German, without or with help, I don't know, but are there Arabic literature, or are there German literature, or are there something in between, or are there no literature at all? What would you say?
No, it is, of course, literature. It is a part of German literature.
German literature, okay.
It is written in the German language, and because he has not so great name in the Arab countries. I have told him, try also to publish your books in the Arab countries, in Arabic or so. But it is easier for him to find a publisher here in Germany, and publish his books. And that's good. I find that it is very good from him.
I think your work problematizes categories as well, right? You just read today a poem that you wrote in German, right? Is this part of Arabic literature, part of German literature?
No, this poem, it is translated by me.
Ah, okay.
It is written in Arabic, and I have translated.
Okay. So you've always written in Arabic?
German.
You have always written in Arabic?
I consider myself an Arab writer, okay. An Arab poet. And when I have translated and published also books in English and also in the German language. I have a book of einem magischen Fest, poetry book about 200 pages. I translated this by myself. Yes, but I don't consider myself to be a German poet. Yes, I am an Arab poet because it is sometimes difficult to find a good translator to translate your book, to understand you, to understand your style. What do you want to say? How to say? Yes, that's very important. I tried to do it by myself. Also in English. Also.
We can have another round of readings if you would like.
Yes, good.
Okay.
I'll tell you something about myself in Iraq, in Kirkuk. It is about my childhood. Yes, and my contact, my relation to the writers, to the magazines. How it is. It is from an article. It is long, but I read only part of them. I lived a magical fest. I was only 8 years old when my father took me with him to an Assyrian teacher who lived in al-Korea neighborhood in Kirkuk and gave private English lessons. My father told me that Gabriel, that was his name, would teach me English. So I spent the whole summer school holiday not playing with my mates in our Musalla neighborhood, but learning English. On the way to Gabriel's house, going on foot as usual, there were no buses in the city in the late 40s. My father said to me in a serious tone of voice, "Look, son, if you learn English well, you can get any job you like. You can be not only a first-class worker in the IPC, Iraqi Petroleum Company, but even a government official in a high position. Do you know why these goddamn English, the Arabic word for the Englishman, always assist a man like Nouri al-Said and allow him to govern Iraq with an iron fist? You don't know, so I'll tell you because he speaks English like one of them. However, my reason for learning English was thoroughly different from my father's. In our neighborhood, there was a child 2 or 3 years older than me called Abbas. He used to mimic very accurately the clipped tones of the American film heroes without knowing even a single word of English. But people thought he must be a genius to speak such good English. I wanted to be better than him by learning to speak real English. I do not think that I have learned too much from Gabriel, but I became at least the only one in my class who knew how to pronounce the English letters and to utter some sentences such as, "That is a book," "What is your name?" "Thank you." Later in the 5th class, when we actually began learning English, I thought I could master the English language at a stroke. To do that, I planned to learn the whole vocabulary of my English-Arabic pocket dictionary by heart. In 2 or 3 weeks, I succeeded in reaching the letter F, but after that, I decided to stop the Sisyphus-like effort stray. Falsely pronounced and random words only augmented the size of my fantasy. My memory was already crowded and filled with symbols and sounds, but I was still far from being able to digest them. There should be another way to learn English, I say to myself. I looked around but found no one to help me or to tell me how to do it. I looked at how I had learned modern standard Arabic and decided to start learning English by reading books. I had learned Arabic as a language of literature, not only in school, but by reading the texts and poems of the classical Arab writers and poets. The first book that I had read and learned most of by heart was the Quran. At that time, parents used to send their children to the mullah in the mosque to teach them some verses of the holy book before sending them to school. But it was not the mullah's job to teach the children the Arabic alphabet. That is why children learn these verses merely as sounds by repeating them over and over without considering the relation between the written letters and the spoken words. I discovered the secret, but decided to keep it to myself.
Thank you. Wonderful. You certainly learned English because you're speaking English today. It's very impressive. Thank you, Dr. Panavik, Professor Dr. Panavik. Thank you, Dr. Fadhil Azzawi. And we reach now Dr. Saleem al-Bahloly. my colleague at NYU Abu Dhabi. Dr. Bahloly received a PhD in anthropology from the University of California, Berkeley in 2015, and an AB in anthropology from the University of Chicago in 2005. He was Mellon postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins University, a fellow in the UMI research program at the Forum of Trans-Regional Studies in Berlin, and a postdoctoral scholar at the Humanities and Social Change Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara for 3 years. His research concerns the artwork in its relationship to religious traditions, the history of science, and the trajectory of left-wing politics. I would sincerely would like to thank Dr. Bahloly for introducing me personally to the work of Dr. Fadhil Azzawi. The first novel I read was آخر الملائكة, which was a gift from Dr. Bahloly. Yeah, Saleem, تفضل.
Dr. Azzawi, you've written hundreds, maybe thousands of poems, 7 novels, 2 books of criticism, at least 2 books of criticism, in addition to numerous articles and translations. And in so much of your writing,
three books.
3 books of criticism.
Yes.
In so much of your writing, you return to the formative experience of your generation in Iraq, which was the introduction to political ideologies on the left and the right that promised paradise through revolution, and then disappointment with those ideologies when those ideologies not only failed to bring about paradise, but instead brought about terrible violence because they promoted a blind faith in ideas that divided the world into friends and enemies. And you wrote from the beginning, from the day you were released from prison, I think it was January 1st, 1965, you wrote to reclaim a space of freedom, not from the state or from a regime, but from ideologies of any kind. Part of that practice of freedom was a refusal to recognize any rules governing writing, the rules of meter and poetry, but also the boundaries that separate different genres of writing, the poem, the novel, criticism, etc. And in collapsing these boundaries, you conceived and you practiced what you called an open text, نص المفتوح, which is capable of being read on different levels and in different ways. So my question is this.
Yes.
Is there something that poetry can do that the novel cannot? If so, what is that? Is there something that the novel can do that poetry cannot? What would that be? Is there something that criticism can do that neither poetry nor the novel is capable of?
Oh, it is a very, very difficult question, but I'll answer that. In fact, I have written 3 books from open text. النص المفتوح. I have 3 books. مخلوقات Fadhil Azzawi's Beautiful Creatures. That's my first book, published in 1969. And I wrote this book as I was between 25 and 27. That was my first book. It is an open text. It is something between poetry, novel, short story, article, and as I said in my book about that, I wanted it to be as a to be read as a novel You can read it as a novel, but you can read it also as poems, or also as articles. And wanted it also to be as music, or painting, or theater. So from all these genres in one genre to put them, that was my first book. Second one was الديناصور الأخير, the last dinosaur. It is rewriting for the first book, but second version, another version. And the third one, I wrote it in English, Fadhil Azzawi's beautiful creature, published and appeared only months ago. Also, it is, you can read it also as a novel. The publisher wanted to send it to some prize, and asked me, what shall we say about it? Is it a novel or poems? Or so it is. I think in the literature there are no limits between genres, or should be. Literature is literature. You can write anything you like. Of course, there are borders between these genres. A poem is something else as a novel, and the article is something else also. But the borders are open between all these genres, and you can to be creative. For creativity, you have it is wrong to put fence and walls, and to say you have to write it so or so. I'll tell you, when I write a poem, a new poem, I forget that I have written any poem before that. I try to discover the poem, how to write a poem every time anew. And when I write a novel, I'll try not to repeat myself, to repeat to repeat other novels. I forget how man writes a novel. I try to write it in any way, in my way. And that gives me freedom to be loyal to myself. Yes, and that is very important in writing. Have I answered?
Not quite, but
Not quite.
I know it's a difficult question, but thinking back over your oeuvre, is there something that a novel enables you to do as a writer that poetry does not, and vice versa? Is there something that poetry allows you to do that a novel does not? And as a writer, how do you think about that?
Yes, of course. When you want to write a novel, you have to get, for example, your heroes, your characters, a plot. There are something you have to do it. But for me, there are things that I cannot say in a poem. I have to say them in a novel.
Like
It is
what?
possible.
Like what? Can you give us an example?
Like what? When I want to illustrate a struggle in a certain society, or to describe or to talk about a despot, a dictator. Yes, I have to make him that we can see him, touch him, talk with him, and so that is not the, I think, easy to make in the poem. Of course, in a poem also you can talk about a dictator, about despot, about a good ruler, or something like this. But you have to do it in a different way. In a novel, for example, there are some sides, psychological sides, for example. You cannot make that in a poem, yes. Or you can make it, but in different way, yes.
Thank you. So you wrote against the revolutionary promise of paradise, but you also reclaimed revolution. You didn't give up on revolution. You reclaimed revolution for poetry in particular, and maybe literature more generally. You understood poetry through the capacity of language to transform the relationship between things. You understood poetry to be capable of changing how we think about the world. So you did have some sense that there is a revolution that poetry is capable of. My question is this: looking back over 6 decades of writing, did literature ever give you the kind of a form of justice, a justice similar to that is sought by revolutions?
Literature gives me a sense of justice.
Yeah. Does literature or poetry, does it ever provide the writer or the reader with a form of justice? Did it provide you with any form of justice?
I don't understand the question. How can the literature provide somebody a sense of justice or understanding the justice? If is this your question?
Yeah. If poetry has a revolutionary power,
Yes, it has a revolutionary power.
but can poetry also offer us some form of justice through its use of language?
Well, I think the whole world, and I think so, and I have tried to reflect that in my writings. The whole world is built by poetry. The poetry is everywhere. The whole universe, I think, is a poem. This feeling that there is something that you see or you touch or you feel, but you can completely understand it. That is a poetry, and that is also the society. In the society, in the world, our life, whole life. I'll tell you, I have tried from the beginning to write about everything, about the society, about children, about men, about women, about love, about hating, about regimes, to do everything. But at the end, I discovered I am writing about myself. So this relation this hidden relation, this secret relation, this magic relation is poetry.
Thank you. That was beautiful. In the introduction to your collected volume of poetry, published a few years ago, you trace your kind of understanding of poetry, the understanding of poetry you just shared with us, to an experience in Kirkuk when you were a
Yes.
child.
Yes.
A relative took you to a Sufi dhikr,
Yes.
and watching the whirling bodies,
Darwish, yes.
you saw how the dervishes lost all awareness with the world around them. And you wrote, and I'm quoting, "In that moment, when all the boundaries separating the dervish from the world collapse, the dervish is on an endless journey into the heart of being, as if the dervish has reached the magical point in which the meaning of existence is concentrated."
That is the moment of poetry.
That is the moment of poetry.
For poetry, real poetry. You have Andre Breton talk also about that, the surrealist. Yes, there is a certain point high. You have to arrive at. Yes, and this point is the point of dervishes. They try also to arrive in such a region.
And yet, in your critical writing, in the editorials you wrote in al-Thawra al-Arabiya, mostly in 1966 and in 1967, you developed this understanding of poetry using philosophical vocabulary that draws largely from existentialism, or Existenzphilosophie, to be more precise. And this writing, this thinking you do in your editorials culminates in the poetic manifesto of Bayan al-Sha'ri that you write in 1969, and signed by other poets. And in the manifesto, you're very clear that the poetry that you are conceiving as a search for truth is not a new Sufism. You position it against metaphysics. So my question is this: for you, how do you think about the relationship between Sufism and existentialism? And as a writer, what has been your relationship to philosophy more generally over the years?
Yes. The Sufism is for me. Of course, I have read many books of Sufis by al-Nifari, al-Hallaj, and others. Their writings are interesting, but there is something which I didn't want to accept it. It is religious. It is connected with the religion, and I am not religious. I didn't want to be religious, because religion, unfortunately, played a negative role in our societies. The religion was once 1,000 years ago, 1,000 or 1,400 years ago, a progressive movement in its society. But to stay until these days, that all the laws written or concepts 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago are alive till now, and we have to obey them. That is very difficult for me to accept it. So religion, the sophisms, is somehow is connected with that. Adonis, the Syrian poet, published a book, Sophism and Surrealism. Yes, but it is something different. I think that is not right to found a relation between Sophism and Surrealism. Of course, the Sophists, they talk with another language, and that is their prestige. They have very not normal Arabic language. Most of the Arab writers, they have a certain language which is political or social or so. But these people, they have some magical language, and that is very, very nice and good. But in the origin, surrealism has nothing to do with God. Surrealism, as Andre Breton manifested, yes, is atheist. They are, yes, and the Sophists, they are. They are not so. They are different. Yes, but we have to be fair also to say their language, the surrealist writers and poets, they have also many things you cannot understand what they are telling or saying or so. They are also somehow they have a magical effect on you. The surrealists also in some another way they have another language, another style, which is not which is difficult to get it or to call it normal.
Can I just ask one follow-up?
Yes.
The magical element in some of your writing,
It's a magic element.
is it inspired by the Sufi writers?
Yes, the magical element is there in the Sufis writing. You can feel them, but always it is connected with God or with the spiritual atmosphere. Or these people. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another round of reading, maybe something short, and then we'll move to the questions from the audience. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank, of course, the technical team with us, and of course, AGYA for hosting us, and the Academy of Sciences and Humanities as well. And I would like to thank also our virtual audience because we tend to forget them in these hybrid events. So thank you for joining us via YouTube.
Yes. I read this poem, The Lion and the Apostle. If you are an apostle, the lion and the apostle. If you are an apostle whose name is carved in the martyr's tablet, I am the ferocious lion standing before you in the ring. Dream as you wish of the gardens of paradise, as I know your limbs to the bone. Ah, don't damn me. You know that we two together only play the roles assigned to us in this world. So rise happy and victorious toward the sky of immortality, while we, lions of the jungle, remain here upon the earth, devouring the saints. A movie in a train station. In a train station in winter, returning from a long journey, I found myself in a movie theater for travelers and watched a film with an unfamiliar plot. It started before I got there, a movie that never ends. It does not matter when you start watching it. Its scenes repeat the way life's events recur. Heroes don thieves' masks. Armies crawl through snow to reach a city. Clowns walk in front of cars dragged by tired horses. Men wearing wings made of wax swim in space. Insects take to their strange paths toward planets under burning suns. Someone finds a pearl and loses it again, and we bleed on the sheets of travelers' beds in a cheap one-night hotel. Dead spectators, living spectators, someone enters, another leaves. The whole is always dark. Our movie goes on without end.
A last one, yeah. Okay.
Toasts. Even though I am drunk and sad and can barely talk, please allow me to propose another toast. A toast to the blind who see in the dark. A toast to the mute who talk to God on the mountain, a toast to the deep who listen to the music of eternity, a toast to the poet who steals fire from the gods, a toast to God to create a better world the next time around. A toast to Satan losing his bet and returning to hell. A toast to the mother under whose feet paradise lay. A toast to the beloved waiting on the shore. A toast to the friend who does not abandon us, even when the rooster crows thrice. A toast to the deceiver who does not whisper evil in people's hearts. A toast to the torturer who flogs himself. A toast to the victim who rises from his torment. A toast to the bird that leaves the cage. A toast to exile that does not defeat our will. A toast to the homeland with rivers running beneath. A toast to freedom until the end. A toast to a world for all in collectivity. A toast to the despots we hire as museum guards. A toast to the tree with roots deep in the earth. A toast to the moon listening to lovers' laments. A toast to the sun in the bitter cold of February. A toast to the planets still rumbling about since the Big Bang. A toast to heaven on earth. A toast to hell pouring concrete over her closet gates. A toast to the past as it tells us it is memories. A toast to the present gushing like a river in the streets. A toast to a future we climb without ladders. A toast to this beautiful short life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Questions from the audience? As you formulate your questions, I'll ask a question of mine. Reading you, Dr. Azzawi, obviously the influence of the Arabian Nights is there, Alf Layla wa Layla. You mentioned today Nifari and Hallaj, and of course other Sufi writers are also obvious in your writing. You mentioned also you memorized big parts of the Quran. I also see an influence of the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? And you mentioned this relationship to language, right? And to the modern standard or the classical, right? Is there something that you use in these works that you've read and that influenced you other than language, right? And I see that there's something that you borrow from these classical works. So the question is about what exactly, how these works has influenced you beyond language, and what is your own relationship to the Turath, to the classical heritage.
Yes, of course we have a great Arabic heritage in literature. We have poems 1,500 years old. And I want to say from the whole Arabic heritage, I like al-Mutanabbi, a poet like al-Mutanabbi, for example, or al-Ma'arri, or Abu Nuwas, many others. also from contemporary poets, the classical ones. But I like much the pre-Islamic poetry, al-Jahiliyyah. This poets like Imru al-Qais, Taraf ibn al-Abd, they are masters, because later, after with Islam and after Islam, many poets turn to be religious. That means ideologies entered their writings, and then they are most of the Arab poets in Umayyadan time, decade, or Abbasidin, or after that. Also in the modern times, they write poets to praise rulers, kings, sheikhs, and so for money. When the poetry dealt, or you value it, the poetry with money, it is no poetry. And then many poets write haja, that is to attack the enemy, or so, or to criticize somebody, not for political reasons. Yes, there is some of them for political reasons, but most of them very primitive. One of our great poets in the Arab literature, al-Mutanabbi, for example, he went once to Egypt, and there was Kafur. He was the ruler. He was black, African, from origin of black. He write a poem, praised him, and so, but because Kafur was not very generous with al-Mutanabbi, al-Mutanabbi ran and wrote a very, very bad, I think, poem about Kafur, about this man. And he is praising in this poem even the slavery. لا تشتري العبد إلا والعصا معه. So I criticize this heritage. For the Arab heritage, that's very important, and it's very important in our time also. We have to leave many things in this heritage. We have to choose the good sides, the good elements of this heritage. Until now, the struggle, the main struggle in the Arab countries, in the Islamic countries, is about heritage. There are many parties, groups, millions of people want us to live according to the laws released 1,000 years ago or more. How that is impossible. This struggle in the Arab countries, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Yemen, it is about heritage. There are people, they want us to live in the past. I say it from the beginning, and that was my main idea. We have to live in our time. We have, yes, we don't deny our past. We have to bring our past to the present, not to send the present to the past. That's the problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Maria?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your inspiring readings. I have a quite different question connected to your readership. So do you have any exchange with your readership or a special connection? I'm asking because I'm thinking about a generation of Arab youth that also has to digest another like political transformation ideas with the left movements and so on. So I'm curious if they maybe read your poetry, your literature to digest what has happened like 10 years ago in the Arab world. Do you have any idea about this? Are you in exchange with some of the younger generations?
Personally, I don't have so contact with the young generation, but my publishers tell me they have contact with them. Yes, I have, I think, I hope, I have a reader in all Arab countries. In Syria, I know personally, I know I have, there are a lot of people, young people, they read my works, my novels, my poems. In Iraq, I think I am well known there. And even under the dictatorship, under Saddam Hussein's dictatorships, before the American came and occupied the country, even at that time, at very hard times, my books were banned. It was impossible to go to the bookstore and buy a book from me. But people copied hundreds and thousands of these books, and they read me. And I have got always until today, they contact me, they send me their books, their drafts, they ask me, and so, yes, and that is very, very important. From very beginning, from the 60s, I have been arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison. I spent 3 years in the prison because of my cultural role. I wanted the people to try to change this society, to change this traditions, this understanding. That's why the regime accused me and other with me, not only that we are influenced by the Western culture, Western writings, but I think the people now is in a better situation. They know that is one of the virtues of internet. Internet made everything open. They see and everything. And also for us, many of our books and poems and all of my books, really, you can download it from the internet and gratis also without paying anything.
Thank you so much. This concludes our first literary salon. I would like to thank again Professor Dr. Panivik. Thank you, Dr. Bahloly. Thank you, Dr. Fadhil Azzawi. Thank you, AGYA. Thank you, the Academy of Sciences and Humanities. And stay tuned. We have scheduled at least 3 other literary salons. They will take place via Zoom on YouTube. On YouTube. Salon with Mohsen al-Ramli, Salon with Daniela Dant, and Salon with Maha Hassan. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to talk with this audience and with you. Very nice. Thank you very much.
The reception